Troelsch. I experienced the men's 72nd Cursillo at St. Cyril's and Methodius in Danville, Pennsylvania in October 2001. Said Day Curia at St. Peter's and St. Paul, and I attended St. Leo's in Lancaster.
Hey, bravo, bravo.
This morning, I want to talk a little bit about some things that are happening today in the Cursillo movement, particularly at the world level, which will impact us in the very near future. And one of the responsibilities of a Cursillo leader is to understand what the charism is. And in the fundamental ideas of the Cursillo movement, here, section 575, we read, "It is the responsibility of the Secretariat to guard the identity of the Cursillo movement and to see to its promotion, development, and direction on the national as well as the diocesan level." So in order to do this, we need to understand what the Cursillo charism is. And so it's important to understand how we discern this particular topic. So to understand that, begin by needing to understand that our movement is part of the Catholic Church, and our existence must be recognized by the Church and consistent with the Catholic Church's teaching. When we studied chapter 5 of the study of the Charism, we learned that the Church addresses the topic of ecclesiastical movements in the Church's canon law. And I want to start there to understand how we relate to the Church and how the Church looks at ecclesiastical movements. And it's addressed, and you can go out to the Vatican sites and see these, access the canon law there, but it's covered in here as well. According to canon law 305-1, both the Holy See and the diocese are to oversee associations. All associations of the Christian faithful are subject to the vigilance of competent church authority, whose duty it is to take care of that integrity of faith and morals is preserved in them and to watch lest abuse creep into ecclesiastical discipline. Therefore, that authority has the right and duty to visit them in accord with the norm of law and statutes. And I want you to notice the word statutes, because that's an important term throughout this. Such associations are also subject to the governance of the same authority according to the prescriptions of the following canons. And it goes on 305.2. Associations of any kind are subject to the vigilance of the Holy See. Diocesan associations and also other associations, to the extent that they work in the diocese, are subject to the vigilance of the local ordinary bishop. In section 321, it reads, "The Christian faithful guide and direct private associations according to the prescripts of their statutes." Okay, so understanding our statutes is an important part of understanding charism and understanding our movement. And it's with those statutes that I want to talk about this morning. Let me see. In 1989, the World Organization of Cursillo Executive Committee requested recognition of the Cursillo movement by the Pontifical Council of the Laity. Although there was recognition of the Cursillo movement within the Church by Pope Paul VI and Pope John Paul II, the request was denied back in 1989. Recognition by the Pontifical Council of the Laity was later sought on May 13, 2004, and the Pontifical Council of the Laity granted the World Organization of Cursillo recognition by the Holy See. So that occurred just in 2004. And again, at that time, in 2004, the statutes, a set of statutes were provided to the Pontifical Council as a preliminary set. And they needed to be reviewed and renewed. They were first scheduled, that was scheduled to happen by the end of 2009. Okay, that did not happen in time. There was an extension granted to the end of 2014, which again just completed. And at that time, an approved set of statutes has been accepted by the Pontifical Council. So Cursillo is now accepted as a legitimate organization within the Catholic Church by the Pontifical Council, based on the statutes which have been presented to the Pontifical Council. The statutes are very brief, about 6 pages long, and it talks about the organization of the movement and how we're structured. There's really 2 pieces in there that I think are important for us as leaders to understand. Again, a lot of this is just 6 pages. A lot of those pages are related to how the organization operates, how it's funded, how voting takes place, and things like that. But there's 2 areas that I think are worth mentioning. One, it defines what is important to the Cursillo movement in understanding the charism. And then the second part is how you go about making changes to the Cursillo movement and the process of doing that. So in chapter 1, in an article from these the statutes, the new statutes that have been approved. In chapter 1, the nature and purpose of the World Organization of Cursillo, saying the objectives of the World Organization are, and I'm just showing certain phrases here, preserving the Cursillo movement in its faithfulness to its charism and the fundamental ideas of the Cursillo movement, fruit of world encounters and official expression of the Cursillo movement, to the conclusions of world encounters. So again, there's this book is a critical part of understanding our charism and also world encounters. Now, there's only been 8 world encounters since the movement began back in the 1940s. You can read the outcomes of those world encounters on the World's Cursillo website. There's a lot of good information out there, and I encourage you to become familiar with that, and you can read a lot of these documents. But again, so the 2 things, we have this book, we have the World Encounters, as expressions of the Cursillo charism, the Cursillo movement. The World Encounters have the following purpose. This is from chapter 6, article 12 of the statutes. Item F says to authorize the review of the book, the fundamental ideas when necessary, and to approve the revised edition, and to approve changes to the present statute. Okay, so it's through these world encounters. The last world encounter was held in Australia in November of 2013. Okay, these things took place at that encounter. That's where these revised statutes were approved. And also, there's a revision of the fundamental ideas that has been in process for 7 years. And that is coming to a conclusion at this point. The book has been approved, the adjustments have been, and they're being, I guess, incorporated. The book's being finalized. It's expected to be finished about June of this year. Again, continuing with the statutes, Article 15, revision of the book, the fundamental ideas will proceed as follows. And we've been through this process. It started in about March of 2013. The appointment of a commission, well, that started much earlier. Dissemination of the revised drafts to the following for their suggestions. It was to the Commission of International Groups, the international groups of the national secretariats, the national secretariats to the diocesan secretariats. So we actually got copies of the draft here. The secretariat got them in March of 2013, March or April 2013. 2013, we were able to go through that draft, make our comments, and submit them back. Review of the resulting suggestions by the Commission, production of a final draft, and that's what went to the encounter in November 2013. And that's where it gets approved by the international groups. Non-approval will necessitate going through the process again. That actually happened. This whole process started back in 2005. For the first time, there was a vote taken for it on the changes and updates. In 2009, that vote did not pass, so they went back and they had to redo at that point. In Chapter 9, it talks in Article 17, again, it talks about how changes are made to the statutes of the world movement. Proposals for such amendments must be suggested by the international groups. Proposed modified statutes are submitted to the Pontifical Council for the laity. And changes require a 2/3 majority of the national secretariats in order for things to be accepted in the changes in the statute. So you're not going to see a lot of changes. Again, they're very simple. Right? And it focuses on those three things: the encounters, and the book, and the charism. So what happened in November 2013? The statutes were modified. Statutes had the approval of the World Encounter. It was voted 21 in favor and 2 countries abstaining. Letter went to the bishop, Joseph Clemens, Secretary of the Pontifical Council at that point, and they were subsequently approved in, I think it was about August of 2014. That was reported again in the OMC, or the World Encounters newsletter of August and September. The decision to accept the draft of the points presented on the fundamental idea changes, there was a vote 17 in favor and 6 against. So the book went on with its approval, and it's being revised, and again that is scheduled to be available somewhere around June. Based on the amount of delays and time that it took to get the votes and everything done, I wouldn't hold your breath that it's going to be delivered on time. Nothing has been delivered on time. So, but they do seem to be progressing. We are sending out updates that we are receiving from the World Cursillo movement, the executive committee. They're putting out monthly newsletters. There's a section at the end of each one of those that shows the summary for each of the chapters. They're showing about 2 chapters each month, giving a summary of what's contained in that chapter. So it is in the process. You can see that it is progressing. It's just in its final stages. So again, what's expected to be happening with this book then, for these updates, and quite honestly, I don't know what's going to be in there. Again, I don't expect large changes. I expect it to be simpler than the existing books. I think that the existing book can be somewhat complicated. I don't know what has finally been approved. We have not seen the final document, but when the U.S. National Secretary receives that, they will be reviewing it for, to see how we comply or don't comply with what's contained in the fundamental ideas. And they'll be determining how we will be responding to that at that time. But these are the documents that have been accepted by the Church, and that's why we need to be attentive to them and be aware of these processes and of the importance of the statutes and these documents. An update has indicated that the revised fundamental ideas will be available by about June of this year. It will be important for the leaders to study and adhere to these revised documents so that we can fulfill our responsibility as leaders of the movement. By following the guidance of the statutes and the fundamental ideas of the Cursillo movement, we can be assured that our movement is united with the Holy See and being faithful to the Cursillo Charism. For now, I encourage you to take the time to look at the revised statutes out on the World Organization. There's a link to that from the national site, and become familiar with that and be prepared as this document comes out. So, with that, take the Lord's.
So, for the original.